Jermaine Allen Mann was born in Brampton, Ontario, to Lineth Lewis and Allen Mann Jr., a couple who married in 1985 and initially built what appeared to be a stable and loving family. Lineth was a young, devoted black mother who openly cherished her son, while Allen, a hardworking man of Ghanaian origin, presented himself as equally invested in their shared life and parental responsibilities. Their home environment reflected happiness on the surface, with shared routines and visible affection shaping the early months of Jermaine's life as an only child. However, as time progressed, small disagreements between Lineth and Allen began to intensify, gradually transforming into sustained conflicts that altered the emotional atmosphere within the household. These disputes evolved into irreconcilable differences, ultimately leading both parents to pursue separation and confront the legal reality of determining custody arrangements for their young son. During the ensuing court proceedings, each parent sought full guardianship, arguing their capacity to provide Jermaine with the most secure and nurturing upbringing possible. After extensive deliberation, the court granted Lineth sole custody while allowing Allen visitation rights scheduled for every other weekend, establishing a legally defined parenting structure. This ruling reinforced Lineth's primary role in Jermaine's daily care and placed responsibility on her to maintain stability, routine, and emotional support within their household. Despite lingering personal tensions, Lineth complied with the visitation schedule, believing adherence to the court's decision was essential to providing a peaceful environment for her child. She maintained a structured lifestyle for Jermaine, balancing work responsibilities with attentive parenting and expressing unwavering dedication to his well-being and development. Jermaine's early childhood was defined by consistent maternal care, affectionate attention, and a routine that provided him with security and comfort. Outwardly, the co-parenting arrangement appeared stable, fostering the impression that cooperation between both parents had been successfully achieved. Internally, unresolved resentment and emotional strain quietly persisted, reflecting the fragile balance that existed beneath the surface of their legal agreement. Lineth continued to prioritize Jermaine's needs above all else, reinforcing her commitment to nurturing him through consistent affection, routine, and protection. At the same time, Allen outwardly accepted his visitation role, yet the deeper emotional tensions within the fractured relationship remained unresolved and silently present. This contrast between apparent stability and underlying conflict defined the conditions surrounding Jermaine's earliest years within his divided family structure. The environment established during this period created a setting where legal compliance and emotional strain coexisted without visible disruption to everyday routines. Although peaceful in appearance, the situation contained unresolved tension that subtly affected the dynamics between both parents and their child. Jermaine remained unaware of these complexities, continuing his early life centered around maternal affection and consistent care. Lineth's focus stayed firmly on providing emotional reassurance, stability, and structure for her son, ensuring that his childhood maintained a sense of normalcy despite the strains shaping the family's fragile emotional landscape. Following the court's ruling, a structured but fragile routine took hold between Lineth Lewis and Allen Mann Jr. regarding the care of their son, Jermaine Allen Mann. Every other weekend, Jermaine was placed in his father's care according to the legally mandated visitation schedule, creating a consistent pattern that Lineth followed despite personal discomfort and persistent unease. She adhered strictly to the arrangement, believing that honoring the court's decision was necessary to preserve stability and order within her son's young life. Although Allen outwardly complied with the visitation agreement, his internal dissatisfaction remained unresolved. He believed he deserved complete authority over Jermaine's upbringing and maintained the conviction that only he could provide what he considered the proper environment and guidance. His resentment toward the custody ruling was concealed behind apparent cooperation, allowing Lineth to believe he had accepted the shared responsibility. This disguise of compliance masked a gradual shift from cooperative parenting to concealed intent and calculated planning. On the morning scheduled for another weekend visit, Lineth carefully prepared Jermaine for the exchange. She dressed him in a plaid shirt, a red undershirt, black jeans, and small shoes, ensuring he appeared neat and comfortable for the time he would spend with his father. The transfer was conducted in the same ordinary manner as previous visits, without signs of conflict or hostility. Jermaine was handed over calmly, and Lineth maintained her composure, trusting that the routine would proceed as it always had before. At that moment, the exchange carried no visible indication of impending danger or permanent separation. Lineth had no reason to suspect that this routine visitation would mark the last time she would see her son for more than 3 decades. Her compliance with the legal arrangement, combined with her trust in the court's authority and Allen's apparent cooperation, reinforced the circumstances that enabled the abduction to occur. This period of structured visitation reflected a delicate balance between legal obligation and emotional strain. While everyday interactions appeared orderly and peaceful, unresolved tension continued beneath the surface. Lineth remained committed to preserving consistency for Jermaine, unaware that the stability she had worked to maintain was about to be irrevocably shattered. This routine reinforced Lineth's belief that predictability and consistency were central to Jermaine's sense of security and emotional development. Each weekend exchange followed the same sequence, creating a familiar structure that appeared to support stability within the divided family arrangement. Lineth continued prioritizing schedule adherence, punctuality, and calm communication to prevent visible disruption to her child's environment. Her confidence in the legal process and respect for the established order guided every decision she made. She remained cautious yet compliant, convinced that cooperation was the safest approach for Jermaine's well-being and long-term emotional preservation within an already strained parental relationship. Every gesture and decision reflected her determination to sustain routine, calmness, and legality during an uncertain and fragile parenting dynamic. Following Jermaine's scheduled return failed to occur, Lineth Lewis immediately noticed his absence and felt rising concern replace the assumed normality of their visitation routine. As the expected time passed without any communication, her unease intensified into visible alarm. She attempted to contact Allen Mann Jr. repeatedly, dialing his phone several times throughout the day, yet each call remained unanswered and eventually disconnected entirely. With no response and no reassurance, Lineth traveled to Allen's residence seeking clarity and confirmation of Jermaine's safety. Upon arriving at the address, she discovered the home appeared abandoned, empty of activity and showing no indication of recent occupancy. The environment suggested an abrupt departure rather than a routine absence, leaving Lineth disoriented and struggling to comprehend the unfolding situation. The realization that both Allen and Jermaine were unaccounted for deepened her fear and confusion, marking the moment concern transformed into genuine distress. Recognizing the severity of the situation, Lineth promptly contacted law enforcement to report her son's disappearance and the unexplained absence of his father. Officers responded to her report and initiated immediate investigative procedures to determine their whereabouts. Authorities conducted initial checks with Allen's known family members, close acquaintances, and associated workplaces, attempting to establish any possible contact or explanation for their sudden disappearance. Despite these efforts, no information surfaced that could clarify Allen's location or confirm Jermaine's safety. The escalation from delayed return to suspected abduction occurred rapidly, defining this moment as the confirmed criminal act central to the unfolding case. Investigators expanded their inquiries, yet every avenue failed to produce tangible results or actionable leads. As hours passed without resolution, the gravity of the disappearance became increasingly apparent, highlighting the seriousness of the situation and reinforcing the reality that both father and child had vanished without trace. Lineth experienced escalating shock as the situation collapsed around her, disrupting every aspect of her daily existence and emotional stability. Each unanswered call and every empty doorway intensified the realization that her son was gone, leaving behind an immediate and devastating void in her life. The systematic inability of authorities to locate either Allen or Jermaine underscored the severity of the crisis and the permanent rupture it caused within Lineth's world. This moment solidified the disappearance as a confirmed abduction rather than a temporary absence, marking the beginning of a prolonged search defined by unanswered questions and overwhelming uncertainty for a mother whose life had been abruptly altered by sudden and incomprehensible loss, an ongoing unresolved absence dominating every thought and daily perception from that moment forward into silence and isolation, filled by persistent unanswered concern and unending worry for her missing son, and the unfolding reality she could neither predict nor prevent through existing authority or protection measures within her limited influence and collapsing sense of security and parental certainty during that dark and irreversible moment of realization and permanent emotional disruption and shocking. Days stretched into weeks, and weeks gradually transformed into months as the search for Jermaine Allen Mann produced no measurable progress or verified breakthroughs. Lineth Lewis continued awaiting any indication of her son's location, but each passing day reinforced the reality that the investigation remained unresolved. As time advanced into years, the absence of confirmed information deepened her emotional devastation and intensified her sense of permanent uncertainty surrounding her child's fate. Despite the lack of results, Lineth refused to surrender hope or abandon the search. She preserved Jermaine's personal belongings, keeping his clothes, toys, and cherished items carefully stored as physical reminders of his presence. Photographs became an enduring source of connection, allowing her to revisit memories and moments that defined his early life. These images represented continuity, sustaining her emotional bond to her missing son while reinforcing her determination to continue seeking him. Law enforcement efforts gradually diminished as available leads were exhausted and investigative momentum declined. Active searches were reduced, and the case transitioned from an immediate priority to a stalled file within an overburdened system. This operational withdrawal reflected the limitations authorities faced when no new evidence emerged to guide further action. Public awareness also began to fade as community attention shifted elsewhere and the visibility of Jermaine's disappearance diminished over time. In contrast, Lineth remained steadfast and unwavering, refusing to detach from her responsibility as a mother. Her daily existence became defined by the persistent effort to remember, document, and preserve every detail connected to her child. While the broader world grew distant from the urgency of the case, her commitment persisted without interruption, driven by the enduring belief that her son could still be located. The prolonged absence introduced a profound psychological strain marked by quiet isolation and continuous emotional hardship. Without closure or explanation, Lineth navigated each day with unresolved grief and persistent concern, existing within a silent space shaped by loss and unanswered questions. Her solitude reflected the reality faced by parents of long-term missing children, revealing the fragile balance between survival and longing. The extended duration of unresolved investigation underscored the severe impact of sustained uncertainty and the slow erosion of normalcy within her personal reality. Each year further solidified the distance between hope and resolution, while preserving her resolve to continue searching despite overwhelming limitations, official inactivity, and the slow erasure of collective attention surrounding her son's disappearance and uncertain life status. Silence gradually replaced urgency, and routine replaced immediate action, yet her persistence never diminished. She continued organizing her days around remembrance, structure, and careful observation, holding on to each fragment of memory connected to Jermaine. The repetitive cycle of waiting created emotional fatigue, but it never produced surrender. Her reality remained shaped by patience, endurance, and quiet strength, maintained through deliberate routine and unwavering dedication to preserving her role as a mother, searching without conclusion or certainty, forever onward. Lineth Lewis sought continued support for the search and established a partnership with Ted Davis through the Missing Children Society of Canada, an organization committed to assisting families of missing children while sustaining investigative efforts beyond traditional police limitations. Ted Davis, a retired police officer, demonstrated unwavering dedication to Lineth's case, recognizing the emotional weight carried by a mother enduring prolonged uncertainty and persistent loss. The mission of the organization centered on maintaining momentum in cases that risked fading from public notice, ensuring continued visibility, structured searching, and ongoing support for affected families. Under Ted's coordination, systematic outreach initiatives were implemented to sustain awareness of Jermaine's disappearance and reinforce engagement across multiple communities. Posters featuring Jermaine's image were distributed throughout public spaces, while informational notices were placed in high-visibility locations to encourage recognition and potential reporting. Telephone hotlines were established to provide accessible reporting channels, allowing individuals to share tips or observations that might lead to meaningful developments. Interviews were organized with acquaintances, associates, and community members, collecting information while reinforcing the sustained nature of the search. These coordinated actions created a structured system of awareness that defied diminishing law enforcement activity and ensured that the case remained active within public consciousness. Ted Davis continued his involvement without interruption, strengthening Lineth's resolve and reinforcing the belief that her son's disappearance would not be forgotten or abandoned. His consistent presence provided emotional reinforcement and practical organization, ensuring that structured efforts continued despite the absence of new leads or confirmed progress. Through sustained coordination, the Missing Children Society of Canada preserved the visibility of Jermaine's case and extended the search far beyond conventional investigative timeframes. Lineth relied on Ted's steady commitment as a critical source of reassurance, allowing her to persevere through continued uncertainty and emotional strain. The sustained outreach maintained national awareness and preserved the case within public memory, preventing it from being erased or overshadowed by time. Ted's dedication maintained operational structure and emotional continuity for Lineth, reinforcing the ongoing relevance of her son's disappearance within investigative records. Despite limited progress, his persistent involvement preserved momentum, reduced isolation, and ensured the search remained consistent, organized, and visible across multiple channels of communication. Lineth continued cooperating closely with Ted, providing information, reviewing updates, and maintaining hope rooted in structured investigative persistence. This partnership symbolized commitment, endurance, and the refusal to allow Jermaine's case to dissolve into forgotten history or unresolved silence. Every coordinated effort reinforced visibility, strengthening community engagement, and preserving the continuity of the search effort over extended time. Through Ted Davis's leadership and organizational discipline, the case remained active, structured, and consistently monitored despite diminishing external attention. This unwavering pursuit sustained Lineth's determination and preserved the investigative framework that continued challenging time, silence, and institutional limitation. Ensuring her son's disappearance retained significance, recognition, and continued advocacy within documented national missing children efforts and formal remembrance and collective awareness. Allen Mann Jr. executed a calculated escape plan designed to permanently remove both himself and Jermaine from Canadian jurisdiction and maternal connection. He obtained fraudulent birth certificates for himself and his son, documents crafted to resemble legitimate United States records, enabling the creation of a new identity and legal foundation for his intended disappearance. With these falsified papers, he abandoned his former identity and transitioned into the name Haley Doza, establishing the basis for an entirely fabricated existence. Using the falsified documentation, Allen crossed into the United States through illegal migration, effectively severing all official ties with his previous life in Canada. He constructed a detailed personal narrative supporting his new identity, presenting himself as a widowed father and asserting that Jermaine's biological mother had died during childbirth. This narrative was consistently reinforced, shaping the child's understanding of his origins and eliminating any awareness of Lineth's existence. Jermaine's upbringing unfolded entirely within this fabricated structure, as he was raised under the belief that Haley Doza was his sole parent and protector. The carefully sustained deception defined every element of his early life, influencing his sense of family, personal history, and emotional framework. No external verification challenged the legitimacy of Allen's assumed identity, allowing the illusion to persist unexamined. For decades, this constructed life remained undetected by both Canadian and American authorities. The use of forged documents effectively concealed true identities and prevented investigative systems from connecting Allen to the unresolved abduction case. The fabricated records were accepted repeatedly, reinforcing the continuity of Haley Doza's false persona as a legitimate resident and parent. During this time, Jermaine integrated into the environment shaped by deception, unknowingly living a life built upon carefully maintained fabrication. The absence of interruption or suspicion allowed Allen to maintain control over the narrative and suppress the truth regarding Jermaine's origins. The sustained concealment created a parallel existence that continued uninterrupted, hidden from legal systems and family awareness alike. This prolonged evasion demonstrated how methodical planning and identity manipulation enabled the disappearance to persist without detection for years. Allen's constructed identity functioned effectively within institutional frameworks, reinforcing the longevity of the deception. The deliberate nature of this transformation underscored the calculated intent behind the abduction and the successful concealment of Jermaine's true lineage across time. Throughout this prolonged concealment, daily life continued under the carefully maintained illusion, with routines shaped entirely around the Haley Doza identity and its corresponding narrative. Jermaine experienced education, community interaction, and parental guidance solely through this constructed framework, with no exposure to conflicting information or questioning authority. The consistency of presentation reinforced credibility, allowing the false identity to remain unquestioned. Every official interaction, record submission, and institutional engagement further validated the fabricated persona. This sustained pattern of acceptance strengthened Allen's ability to maintain control and ensured the deception persisted unchallenged for generations of time within an artificially constructed historical continuity narrative structure permanently. Ted Davis's investigation reached a decisive turning point when he successfully traced the source of the counterfeit birth certificates used by Allen Mann Jr. to construct his false identity. This discovery represented the first concrete lead in nearly 30 years and provided a tangible foundation for renewed law enforcement action. With this verified information, coordination between Canadian and United States authorities became both necessary and achievable, resulting in the formal creation of a joint fugitive task force. This collaborative unit combined investigative resources, intelligence sharing, and jurisdictional authority to systematically pursue Allen's concealed location and identity. Fingerprint records associated with Allen Mann Jr. were submitted to expanded databases, allowing technological analysis to function as the primary tool for identification. Advances in biometric comparison enabled investigators to link prior Canadian records to the new false identity being used within American systems. The process relied on the integration of updated technology and coordinated procedural analysis. Law enforcement agencies shared verified data across borders, ensuring that both nations maintained unified oversight throughout the operation. This methodical approach ensured that Allen's assumed identity could no longer remain shielded by outdated documentation or jurisdictional separation. As Allen engaged with official systems under his false identity, his information was flagged for further evaluation. The fingerprint comparison ultimately confirmed that Haley Doza and Allen Mann Jr. were the same individual, conclusively establishing the connection that decades of searching had failed to achieve. This technological verification provided legal justification for immediate enforcement action. Authorities acted upon this confirmation, bringing Allen into custody and marking the first successful breach in his prolonged concealment. The moment represented a pivotal breakthrough, transforming a decades-old unresolved disappearance into an active criminal resolution process. The arrest signified the culmination of persistent investigative effort and technological advancement combined through international cooperation. Ted Davis's role within this process reflected unwavering determination and expert persistence. His commitment to locating Jermaine and exposing the truth behind Allen's fabricated identity directly contributed to this pivotal resolution. The collaboration between law enforcement agencies demonstrated the effectiveness of shared intelligence and modern forensic systems in recovering long-hidden truths. This critical development redefined the trajectory of the case, firmly transitioning it from prolonged uncertainty to verified accountability. The fingerprint match served as undeniable confirmation, eliminating speculation and uncertainty that had surrounded the disappearance for decades. Allen's capture confirmed that sustained investigative precision, combined with technological evolution, could overcome even the most carefully constructed deception. This outcome validated years of disciplined effort and reinforced the importance of cross-border cooperation in complex abduction cases. Investigators remain focused on procedural accuracy, ensuring each step aligned with established legal standards and evidentiary requirements. The verified identification allowed authorities to initiate formal judicial proceedings and restore clarity to a case long defined by uncertainty. Through careful coordination, technology and persistence achieved resolution, proving institutional collaboration could finally deliver accountability and factual closure for future investigative integrity. Lineth Lewis finally came face-to-face with Jermaine Allen Mann after 31 years of enforced separation, marking the first moment they shared since his disappearance as a toddler. The reunion occurred in a controlled setting where both mother and son were given time to process reality and acknowledge the truth of their relationship. Lineth observed the man standing before her and recognized familiar features that reflected the child she remembered, confirming an undeniable connection shaped by time and loss. They spoke privately, exchanging details of lived experiences, fragmented memories, and the emotional burden created by years apart. Jermaine shared how he had grown believing a different narrative regarding his origins and listened as Lineth recounted the consistent hope she maintained throughout the decades. Their conversation focused on restoring understanding, clarifying identity, and acknowledging the significant time that had been taken from them. During their time together, they reviewed photographs documenting Jermaine's infancy and early childhood, allowing visual confirmation of shared history and connection. Lineth described moments from his early life, reinforcing memories that had remained preserved despite prolonged absence. Jermaine expressed his realization that years of separation represented stolen time and irreversible distance within their relationship. The exchange remained grounded in sincerity, reflection, and mutual recognition. Both acknowledged the difficulty of bridging a lifetime of lost experiences while committing to understanding one another as present individuals. This meeting represented a form of emotional closure, allowing recognition of truth while affirming the enduring bond between mother and son. The reality of their reunion carried the weight of documented absence and confirmed survival. Jermaine processed the knowledge that his past understanding had been shaped by misinformation, while Lineth confronted the tangible presence of the adult her child had become. The experience underscored the magnitude of time lost and the complex emotional adjustment required for both individuals to reconcile the present with the past. They continued their conversations with patience, careful listening, and mutual respect as they explored their shared history. Each moment of dialogue contributed to understanding and acceptance, reinforcing the authenticity of their connection. The reunion did not serve to erase previous pain, but it provided validation that their relationship had endured despite prolonged separation and misrepresentation. The atmosphere remained calm and reflective, emphasizing factual recognition rather than dramatic expression. Lineth and Jermaine approached their interaction with sincerity and measured restraint, acknowledging the reality of circumstances that had shaped their lives. The reunion demonstrated the possibility of reconnection through honesty, shared acknowledgement, and personal resilience. It represented a significant milestone in their journey toward understanding and renewed familial presence. This encounter provided a starting point for continued communication and emotional rebuilding grounded in truth. Their meeting reaffirmed identity, restored awareness, and offered a foundation for ongoing reconciliation. Although years were lost, the reunion affirmed their bond and confirmed the enduring significance of their relationship within documented historical context permanently. Allen Mann Jr. faced formal prosecution following his arrest, marking the beginning of legal accountability for the prolonged abduction and identity manipulation that defined the case. Judicial proceedings were initiated within the United States to address offenses committed under his false identity, including fraud and false representation, before arrangements for extradition to Canada were prepared. The extradition process ensured that Allen would face additional charges connected directly to the kidnapping and unlawful removal of Jermaine Allen Mann from Canadian jurisdiction. Throughout these proceedings, Jermaine confronted a complex emotional struggle as the reality of his true identity replaced the narrative he had known for decades. He processed the recognition that his personal history had been constructed through deliberate deception, requiring significant adjustment and internal reconciliation. The transition from perceived stability to verified truth introduced emotional uncertainty, reshaping his understanding of family, belonging, and personal origin. Lineth Lewis observed these developments with cautious awareness, recognizing both the relief of legal resolution and the emotional toll imposed on her son. She remained focused on supporting Jermaine as he navigated the difficult process of redefining his sense of self. Their reunification had restored connection, but introduced new questions concerning long-term direction and emotional stability. As legal processes continued, unresolved decisions emerged regarding cultural and geographic belonging. Jermaine faced the possibility of remaining in the United States, where he had established his adult life, or reconnecting more permanently with his Canadian roots alongside his mother. These choices reflected broader considerations involving community ties, identity development, and future integration. Lineth also faced corresponding decisions considering whether relocation or continued separation by distance would influence their renewed relationship. The weight of these decisions emphasized the complexity of rebuilding familial bonds after decades of separation. Both mother and son remained in a period of adjustment, confronting uncertainty with cautious evaluation and measured reflection. This final phase of the case underscored the lasting consequences of prolonged abduction and deception. While Allen's prosecution marked an essential step toward accountability, it also revealed the enduring emotional challenges left behind. The resolution of legal matters did not immediately resolve the personal transformation required by those most affected. Instead, it provided structure through which healing and future planning could gradually develop within uncertain circumstances. Their shared path forward remained undefined, shaped by choices that required careful consideration, emotional understanding, and a balanced acknowledgement of past harm and future possibility. The conclusion reflected a complex intersection of justice, identity, and reconciliation, affirming that closure is not merely legal, but deeply personal and evolving over time. Jermaine's ongoing reflection illustrated the difficulty of reconciling lived experience with newly revealed truth, emphasizing the depth of internal transformation required. Lineth remained patient and attentive, aware that rebuilding trust and redefining connection required time, sensitivity, and continued communication. Their unresolved future illustrated the enduring impact of the case on identity, belonging, stability, and emotional continuity moving forward.